only silence, no silence. And from the silence of the mind, you can be introduced in the real silence. Only silence can hear silence. So to hear the silence that is all-pervasive, you have to be yourself established in this inner silence. So the silence that we are speaking here about is not the absence of thoughts within the mind or the absence of noise, sound perceptions outside. Because you can be in that profound silence and still watch some thoughts coming, and you can hear sounds. So that silence is the silence of this primal consciousness. Now, what is the primal consciousness? The direct reflection of the Absolute, here manifested as awareness. But awareness not associated with anything of the mind. The moment this pure primal consciousness, reflected consciousness, gets associated with the mind, you go into a story, an identity. And that prevents you to see what is. I mentioned perhaps in the past, like I was staying for a while in Missouri for some studies, and above Missouri, that's Landur, there's a beautiful forest of cedars, Himalayan cedars. Surprisingly, on one of these cedars, there was a note, "Can you hear me?" Somebody would have put that. Okay, so what is it all about? Can you hear me? Is the silence of the forest the real silence? No, because government or a private company may come and cut the trees, it will be a huge noise. That silence of the forest depends on circumstances. This silence is fragile. It's not that the real silence of the forest. The real silence is the one that never changes. But the silence, the phenomenal silence of the forest is very conducive. The phenomenal silence of mountains, when you are in altitude, is very conducive because it helps to connect to the real silence. But the moment you objectivize, you name the tree, in this case the cedar, you name, you label, you put a label, you can't see the tree anymore. The moment you name anything, you can't see it. What you see again is an interpretation of the mind. It's an objectivization of the mind. So you can't see what the world really is by conceptualizing, objectivizing, by naming. You create a form because of the instrument of the mind, and you create separation. You create duality. You are not a cedar, but there's a cedar there in front of you. While all that is present here is the same essence. So the mind goes into distinctions, differentiations, separation. So the moment you name the tree, you can't see it and you can't hear it. So if you remove the conceptualization, the objectivization of consciousness, then you experience the primal consciousness. A German mystic who was a Zen teacher. Maybe some of you know him. He has written a lot. He stayed a long time in Japan, and then he opened a center, a Zen center in the Black Forest in Germany. Karl Graf Durkheim. He has many disciples who are teaching today. He said, when consciousness is free from objects, you experience the profound silence of being. And so this is really the sadhana of the spiritual seeker, to free consciousness from the objects. To free consciousness from the objects, you need dispassion. Because as long as there are strong interests in the mind, in your subconscious mind, in the form of vasanas, latent tendencies, you can't remove your attention from these objects. See how detachment is fundamental. The moment you are detached, you start tasting this deep silence. That means your attention cannot be trapped in any object, any relation, any situation. It is free. And naturally, it comes back to itself. It was habituated to go towards the objects, the forms of the outer world. And now, naturally, when you leave this attention in you alone, it comes back to itself. And from this moment, you experience silence. Sri Ramana Maharshi used to quote the Bible. And he said there are two statements there that are purely Vedantic. And these two quotes are from the first from the book of Exodus, chapter 2, when God reveals his name to Moses. I am that I am. So this is about its absolute being or beingness. And the second quote comes from a psalm, which is the most beautiful prayers of the Jewish tradition, Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am the Lord. That's what the prophet Elijah experienced one day. That's how he experienced the divine one day, directly, through the stillness. So, and this Psalm 46, this quote from this psalm, is actually the core teaching of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. In Tamil language, Summa Iru, sorry for the pronunciation, it means be quiet, don't stir a thought. So when you come to this silence, which is prior to the thoughts, it's not the absence of thoughts, it's not the interruption of thoughts. That would be a sort of artificial silence. The real silence is ever present. Even when you interrupt the thoughts, that silence was already there. You can't create it. You can't force it. It is ever present, natural, spontaneous. So when you come to abide in that inner natural silence, then you can connect with the heart and you can receive the transmission from the teacher, from the guru, from the heart. And this is, again, the highest teaching. It is, as it were, the language of silence without a single word from heart to heart. Presence in the form of the guru, in the heart of the guru, recognizing presence in the heart of the seeker. There is no need of any word. Words are only when we can't connect yet with our deeper self. Silence, the silence we are speaking about here, is the nature itself of the consciousness that is reflected. So we call it the Antakaran Upahita Chaitanya consciousness, Antakaran mind, Upahita, that which is conditioned by mind. It is the reflected consciousness, because being conditioned by mind, it is a subjective consciousness, a reflected subjective consciousness. But the nature of that subjective, reflected consciousness is silence. In the absolute consciousness, you can also say it is absolute silence, but that doesn't make sense. It's beyond any description. When you experience silence at your deeper self, in your deeper self, it is an experience. And you can't say that it is an objective experience, but it is experienced. The I amness is experienced. It's a higher experience, as I explained, because the duality is not really there. It's still there a little, but not really. So it's more like already consciousness experiencing consciousness. You can't say that in this inner silence, you, as the separate individual being, you are experiencing that silence. It's beyond this description, dualistic description. You can't speak about it in the same way that you speak about your experiences. I am that silence. It's my true nature. It's not that I experience silence. I am that silence. So to hear the teachings of the Master, one has to cultivate this silence, because the external silence means the movements, the fluctuation, the mind can be a great barrier in the beginning. So you have to slow down the mind. If you don't slow down the mind, how can you come to this deeper silence? So definitely silence, we call mona in Sanskrit, is not only the nature of this awareness, pure awareness within us, but it is also a sadhana. But this sadhana should be well understood. Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi was quite critical about those who would take a vow of silence, because that may look really artificial, because actually they want to speak a lot, but they observe some restraint, and you can feel that there's an inner pressure. They want to speak, but they have taken a vow. Why Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi was critical about that? Because it is not the speech that is the cause of your thinking. It is the thinking that is the cause of your speech. So the speech doesn't matter. Of course, there is a relation between speech and thoughts. By reducing a little bit the speech, what we are doing here, during this retreat, it will have an impact on the flow of your thoughts. But if it is a repression, that definitely will invite some side effects in you. It will not be conducive because it is quite artificial. So then, the main practice to arrive to a level of mental silence is to reduce the thoughts flow, and we do so by watching the thoughts. That is the best way to reduce the flow, because the moment you watch the thought will stop. There's usually a chain of thoughts. That chain will be interrupted just by watching, and eventually the thought will vanish. So witnessing of thinking process is most powerful. But if that is not possible, then we have also the mantra technique. That means you keep only one thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Keep only one thought. That will also lead you to a profound silence at some point of time. For the Advent seeker, to watch the space between two thoughts is also very conducive. Because have you noticed that first when you speak, you need to breathe? You need to breathe. And there is definitely a space between two thoughts. Now, if you bring your attention to that interstitial space between two thoughts, and you remain there, this will slow down the traffic of the thoughts. And now, if you try to trace back any single thought that arises in your mind, just be vigilant, be alert, and see that when one thought arises, it must come from somewhere. Can you trace it back? Where do my thoughts come from? This is the proof that you, as the witness of the thinking process, you are not the thinker. So who is the thinker? The mind is the thinker. The mind is a thinking machine. It is meant for that and many other things also. It is your mind that is thinking, and thinking for you, and thinking you, and shaping your identity. Your identity is only in the form of thoughts. What you think about yourself, what you believe about yourself. Your thoughts, your memories are essential to keep your identity, your personal identity. So if you try now for any single thought to retrace it back to its source, to find out the origin, the birthplace of the thought, what will you find? It can only be, again, this conscious background. It comes from the conscious background. How does it come from there? Through the processing of the mind. The mind is an instrument that appears in consciousness to produce thoughts, to produce this conceptual intelligence, your logical thinking, which is an instrument in the evolution of life. Thoughts can only appear in your pure presence. So, Mona, silence, is the nature of our true self. It is also a sadhana, but a sadhana well understood, that the silence cannot be forced. The sadhana should be without too much of an effort, but definitely we have to quieten the mind. So when you quieten the mind, you realize what is really here. You realize the isness. Now you were in the thinkness. You were in the objectivization, in the nama rupa, names and forms, through the mind. But if you stand at the origin of the thoughts, in your simple, pure presence, you recognize that same presence everywhere. Trees are there, river is there, mountains are there, because these are perceptions. But if you remain at the level of the mind interpretation, the mind projection, then you can't see what is really there. But when you withdraw from this processing of the mind, from conceptualization, then you connect deeply with everything. So why, when we approach a realized master, there's a feeling that we know each other since very long, and he welcomes or she welcomes you as a very dear friend, as if we were always together, because the sage recognizes what you really are. All the rest are just words, thoughts, memories, concepts, story, Facebook. You see, it's not what you really are. That also, by the way, will go. That has a date of expiry. So he sees or she sees your immortal nature, what you have always been and what you will never cease to be. So only through silence you can receive the transmission, the initiation. So to be enveloped in this silence when you meet such a great sage, or if you suddenly experience this deep silence, it is an initiation. You are introduced. What is the meaning of initiation? It comes from a Latin word, means path. It means you are introduced. in the reality of consciousness. You were caught up in the phenomenal reality of the world, with all the beliefs about this world, yourself, and so-called others. And now you are introducing the secret of this whole phenomenality, which is not hidden. It's not hidden. But the only condition for that is to be quiet, to connect with your inner, spontaneous, natural silence. So silence is actually the nature and the experience of the consciousness we are. And so when you experience that, and you will definitely one day experience it, then this is the starting of the journey. Because now you see it. It's a direct experience. And from there onwards, don't go back to the noise of the mind. Let the mind be your navigation instrument, your software, to deal, to interact with this world, but nothing there to entertain. Because this silence is most fulfilling. It is the inner fulfillment that you don't even feel like eating, not even sleeping. This is the deepest, the highest food. It is fulfillment of the being. I mentioned that sage whom I met one day, and the living sage in Europe, and he said, like, when I asked the question, what is your essential instruction? And he said, more awareness and more silence. They go together. They go together. Silence is the origin of this universe. It is from silence that, the silence we are speaking about, it is from silence that this universe has arisen. And it is to silence that the universe will go back, returns, dissolves. Silence is the beginning and the end. Silence is the essence of absolutely everything. And so when you connect with it within you, you feel it everywhere. The silence, the most busy city, Hong Kong, Manhattan. You walk on those streets, a lot of noise, and yet this noise cannot touch you. And moreover, you feel that even the cars are silent, even the people are silent. So there's a deep resonance everywhere. If this becomes now your experience, know that you are introduced, you are initiated in your true nature. And don't leave it. Don't go back to the old patterns of the mind. So from here onwards, you need a discipline. Don't betray that silence by going back to the old patterns. Don't touch the old stuff of the mind. A disciple of Sri Ramana Maharshi, who was initiated by him after his physical death, which took place in 1950, that is Sri Nanagahu, was also known as imparting this truth through silence, especially in big gathering. Whereas foreigners would really expect some teachings and take notes and record, video record, so that they can go back with something, some teaching, some instructions. He was not speaking, rarely. And you would have hundreds of Indians and foreigners sitting around him. He would not speak. So he was the true disciple of Sri Ramana Maharshi. Only silence, no silence. And from the silence of the mind, which is still superficial, you can be introduced in the real silence. Only silence can hear silence. So to hear the silence that is all-pervasive, you have to be yourself established in this inner silence.